Rangers fans, welcome to episode 10 of Rangers Recon, the premier place to become a smarter hockey fan and a Rangers fan, a part of Icehouse Alongside Arthur Staple, I'm Andrew Chelney, and we've got a very special guest joining the show today, a former Ranger, part of the 2014 finals team, does a fantastic job on the media side of the game right now. And I'm not just saying that because he's right here. Very cool of him to give us some time. It's Dominic Moore. Dom, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to join you guys. How are you?
Fantastic.
Everybody's doing great.
You guys all settled down from this New York Knicks frenzy. And,
it's funny. Andrew is a big Knick fan, and I was going to make that my first question to you, Dom, because you were a Ranger twice, early 2000s when the Knicks were still, kind of the ties to the 90s teams, and then 10 years later when they were a little bit, more off the map. When you were here, did you get the feeling that if the Knicks were ever to reach the pinnacle, that would be the thing that would make New York go crazy, which is exactly what's happening right now?
Yeah. I mean, all the way out here in Utah, you can just feel the energy that's emanating from New York and the epicenter of it all, Madison Square Garden. I mean, it's something that like only New York can do, right? Any other place can win a championship, but only New York can captivate the entire country around it. And thinking back to my days, sharing the practice facility with the Knicks and going in the morning to the breakfast room and having Knicks players, staff, it was always such a special thing, right? To have that kind of bond under the umbrella. It's something we have here in Utah as well, which I love. It's something that I loved back in the day as part of the Rangers organization and MSG. And now, to have that as well with the Jazz and the Mammoth, both under the care of Ryan and Ashley Smith. But I have to say, in my time in New York, I did not think there was a Knicks championship coming anytime soon. They were certainly looking to find their way. One of the special memories for me, though, that's Knicks related was when I was, a teenager growing up, maybe young adult, I found Sacred Hoops, which is Phil Jackson's book. And I grew up a huge Michael Jordan fan, was really into the Bulls at that time when in their heyday, and obviously Phil Jackson leading that team. His book was incredible. It really resonated with me. One of my most important books that I read as a kid. And so then during my time in New York, when Phil joined the Knicks organization, I had these moments where I was able to bump into him in the breakfast room and talk to him, and he knew his stuff about hockey. And I never really had a chance to talk to him for any extended time. I did get the chance to tell him how much I appreciated and was grateful for his book. But that was an awesome part of one of the many benefits of being a professional athlete.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I watched them win on Saturday, and I first of all, I haven't been sober since, but also I can't believe it. Like it's something that this city, in hockey and football, everybody's got their separate teams because there's two teams for everything here. So even if if the Giants win, there's going to be a big contingent here, but there's still going to be a section that's a Jets fan, and there isn't that unquenchable thirst for a victory, just quite like the city has for the Knicks. Everyone here's a Knicks fan. Oh, the Nuts are here now. Yeah, they are here in spirit.
They don't measure up.
Everybody in Brooklyn's a Knicks fan. They came here just too late at this point, and everybody in this city, all 8 million people or however whatever the number is now, everybody is a Knicks fan, and to be a part. I was in Washington Square on West 4th after they won, and it's something that I can't even replicate. And now the Rangers have to do the same as well.
Yeah, it really is, right? The coming together, what I think is the most special thing, everybody can be from different walks of life, but they're unified around this one thing, the way you described. In a different way, obviously, our runs in 2014, having these watch parties in Bryant Park and all of that, like those, as a player, you feel that, right? You feel that unity, that bandwagon that's grown to epic proportions. There's the diehard blue shirt fans that are always there, and then there's everyone else that has followed along, but now they're all in, and that's a big part of it. By the way, was Phil Jackson on the 73 team that won? Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Good memory. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Dom, 2014, it had been, that was your first year back, but that you came back into a team that had gotten close a couple of times to, got into a conference final. Obviously the coaching changed too. Did it have that captivating effect for the city? Because, like we said, the Giants, I think, were really the only team that had won within the last few years, and the Knicks were kind of really far from even being competitive back then. Sorry, Andrew. I know that was your formative days, but
I watched some bad teams there.
Yeah, okay. As you were building that season, Dom, and I know it started off kind of in a funky way too, but as you were building that season, did it feel like the city was really starting to, rally behind you and make it a special experience?
For sure. I have to think back to about, I don't think our expectations were very high. You think about that team early in the season, new coach. Yes, they'd had some success in the previous number of years, but no one, I think, thought of us as a contender at the beginning of the season, really. Alain Vigneault comes in. We start the first month of the season on the road, including training camp. I think we were in Banff or something, Glenn Sather's old stomping grounds. So we spent like basically 2 months straight on the road. We come home around 500. We're not playing particularly well. I personally, I have to look back at when exactly this was. I believe we were in Florida. It might have been November or December, and basically I'm skating around before practice, and Alain Vigneault comes over and has a one-on-one with me, and he says, "Listen, this next month is very important for the team." He told me, "Dom, if we can start to win a bunch of games, and show that we're a contending team, then that's one path. If we start to go the other way, I just want you to know that you're probably a guy that we're going to trade, because we're going to start to do some retooling here." And I appreciated that he was very upfront with me. And literally from almost that day forward, we started to go on a tear, and we just continued to build and build over the course of the season. For me personally, there was very much this building because I had been off for 18 months. And even though I came back, I wasn't anywhere near the player that I could be. And I understood that. And I was just trying to be patient with myself and do the things I needed to do on a daily basis. I have to give so much credit to the support that I had from folks like Reg Grant, our strength and conditioning coach at the time, who just helped guide me along the way so that I could, over the course of the season, just get better and better and better, getting back where I was, and then hoping obviously to go beyond that, so that when push came to shove, if we were lucky enough to be in a playoff race, I could bring value and show my worth, which was eventually how it played out for us collectively as a group, and for me personally, just to be a part of that run. To your question about the vibe around the city, yeah, I mean, it was off the charts, especially because it was more of a surprise. We came back from 3-1 down early in the playoffs. We didn't really have, other than our goaltender, a superstar on the team. You look at our leading scorer had 50 something points, I think. So it was really a team, a true team in that sense of the word. There was the 20-year anniversary of '94. Obviously, that played into it as well. So just a incredibly special year to be a small part of that whole feeling. I still get chills thinking about it.
Dom, I want to ask you, because you said, AV talked to you and you appreciated that he was honest with you. I guess I have two parts to this. One, do you think that more coaches should be upfront with their players in that regard? Because some players like you might take it well, some might not take it so well. And I'm interested to see what you think as to how coaches should be approaching that. And two, did he talk to other players? Was that something that you guys talked about in the locker room that kind of led to the surge for you after that? Or was that kind of just a one-on-one and everything fell into place after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that particular scenario, I think he recognized that I was a veteran guy, recognized that, I was probably someone that he felt I deserved the respect to communicate that to. I wouldn't say, he was always that way, even with me later, in the next few years. I always believe that coaches, whether it's good news or bad news, be upfront, right? It's all about transparency. Players respect that, even if you're not delivering them the news they want to hear. They want to know where they stand. They want to know what they're thinking. I think players are adults. They're tough. I think better communication is always a good thing. It's the mushroom treatment that I think frustrates players, right? Keep them in the dark and feed them BS. I think there's still a lot of that goes on in different places, and obviously you'll hear players talk about that being a tremendous source of frustration for them. But I think that's what a lot of players respected about John Tortorella, right? Like, he's just going to tell it to you like it is. He'll tell everyone like it is.
Including Johnny Lazarus.
Yes, including our old friend, yeah.
Yeah, at least you know where you stand. So yeah.
I would imagine that the signature moment for you to look back on is the goal in Game 6 of the conference final to send the team to the Stanley Cup final. Guy named Henrik Lundqvist also played a little part in that too. But that series was such a, you bring it up still, I think, to Canadiens fans, and there's just visible anger and hatred for Chris Kreider for knocking Carey Price out of that series very early on. And, you played with Kreids for a couple of years now that he's no longer a Ranger. He is not a guy that goes in looking for trouble normally. What was the vibe around that particular play? Because it was such a turning point, and then kind of take me in through that feeling of scoring that goal in the Garden to send the team to the finals for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah. So first of all, I can appreciate Montreal fans where they're coming from. Obviously, I was with Montreal in 2010 when we made a huge run in the playoffs to the conference finals. That was a great run for the team, and the passion in that city is crazy, as we all know. Kreids, I love Kreids. The most explosive skater perhaps I ever played with. Just sheer power, and that kind of speed and power. He's a specimen of a human, right? We've all seen the videos of him jumping out of pools and landing on the pool deck, so. But the flip side of his power and speed was that he's a dangerous guy to be around, including practice. He started to get a reputation of just, watch out. Like, Kreids, even in practice, will just completely unintentionally, injure someone because he's just so much power and speed, and maybe a little bit less awareness at times of controlling that speed. So I don't think there was anything intentional about the way it happened with Carey Price. And I certainly can respect the fact that maybe things would be different if they had Price instead of Tokarski. But you look at Game 6, the Canadians didn't score a goal, and I don't think Carey Price would have put a puck in the back of the net. So maybe we can rewrite some things, but we can't rewrite all of it. And speaking of not getting a puck in the net, I mean, two things stand out from that game. I'll get to the goal, but the first is the save. It just is like puck changes directions in midair, and Hank somehow has the reaction and presence of mind to just go back from the direction he was going. And I mean, that save should go down in the annals of history as one of the most incredible, miraculous saves of all time, especially given the moment. I mean, I can't say enough about him, that save, him as a player and what he means to the team and the organization and the city now and forever. We'll always cherish the memories I have with Hank going back to our rookie year together. We came in at the same time. I always had a ton of respect for him because he was his own guy. Like he didn't become a star and then put on the pointy shoes. He had them before, so that, and when it comes to the goal, yeah, obviously the highlight of my career. I think the best part about that was, speaking of AV not being a saint all the time, there was a meeting we had. Again, I have to pinpoint what time of year this was. He was addressing the team in the locker room, and basically he said something along the lines of, "You know what, guys? We don't have any superstars in this room, but we do have 3 good lines." And Brian Boyle and I looked at each other and we said, "Okay." That's
incredible.
He didn't mean it. He wasn't trying to get under our skin. I can assure you of that. But Boyle and I, and Derek Dorsett was there. We had a guy shuffling in and out as the other winger on that line, but we kind of made it our thing that I said to Brian at one point, I said, Boiler, we've got to make $1 out of a nickel. We're not going to play a ton of minutes. We do have an important role in terms of, PK and face-offs, and he's going to use us to play against top lines, but we got to score as well. We've got to produce for the team. And that kind of became our mantra. Like we're gonna be difference makers, and we were really good. I think the rapport with Boiler and I especially was really good. We communicated well, had each other's back. Both of us were natural centers, and so even though I played in the middle and took most of the draws, I knew I could count on him to back me up if I went in on the forecheck. He would be there and support. So it was a really good chemistry that we had. And then in the playoffs, our job is to shut down Crosby and Ovechkin and all these guys. And I always took a ton of pride in that. It was a job that I thrived on. I craved it. What could be better than trying to shut down the top players in the league? Maybe get under their skin at times, but mostly doing that by playing good defense and frustrating them into that. So it was a great experience that way. And then, of course, to be able to chip in a 1-0 game with that kind of the camaraderie with our line and the pass from Boiler, just doing that collectively together, I think, is the most special.
Dom, what does leadership in a NHL locker room look like? I know it's different depending on the team and the atmosphere, etc. But at least from an outside perspective, it seems like the 2014 team was together in the locker room. There was kind of this set, maybe list of unwritten rules, and you guys were together as a team, going to games and playing for each other. As of comparatively to what this team looks like right now, where there's a bigger question mark as to the leadership, and culminating with no BS shirts, and that led to the Rangers being dead last in the Eastern Conference. So from your perspective, what does leadership look like, and how does one go about, I guess, changing it, or for the worse or for the better?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it helps to clarify what it isn't. I'm a big believer that it's not about yelling and screaming at people and big speeches and anything like that. I think it's more about what you do. The best leaders that I've been around, the Marty St. Louis of the world, they are the ones that live it. Their character, the way they act, their habits every day, those are things that you follow. And you think about Rod Brendamore right now as a fresh example of that. Like, you hear the guys talk about him, and they describe him as the hardest worker. And he doesn't need to go in there and yell and scream. They buy in because they see his dedication, his focus, his passion, how much he cares, not only about winning, but about them and about helping everyone be better in a totally authentic way. That just kind of automatically builds trust. So that's a good example for our 2014 team. I mean, we didn't really have an alpha leader in the room. I mean, Hank obviously was our leader in so many ways, but on game days, he's just doing his thing. That was the only way he could operate, was just focus on himself and preparing to play the best game he can. And he doesn't have the bandwidth to really focus on anything else. In fact, you don't talk to him on the game day because like he's so dialed into his routine. Ryan McDonough is a man of few words. Everyone knows that. But a great character guy that leads in the way I just talked about. But we had a chemistry in that room that I think added up to something special. And the things that come to mind are Zook, being such a lighthearted, happy-go-lucky guy. That was a really important ingredient in our Ranger recipe. Kevin Klein, for those fans who don't remember him as well, he had this hippie vibe and would, get up and do this ridiculous dance before we went out for the game and just lighten everybody's mood. He would, I don't know if I've shared this publicly or not, but, there used to be this, if we had a bad loss, you come into the rink the next day and it's like a morgue. Nobody's talking, scowls on the faces of the coaches, just bitter. You hear a pin drop, and then all of a sudden Kleiner would go into the stereo and he'd turn on Bob Marley and blast it through. Don't worry about a thing, and the whole facility has got Bob Marley playing, and like even AV couldn't help but laugh, right? And he just turned the whole mood around. And to me, that's leadership, right? Like, that's him being authentic to himself, Kleiner being himself, feeling the room, knowing what the team needs, even doing something against what he felt the coaches wanted. But again, that was our team. We had something unique.
One of the guys, as we talk about leadership, that you played with, who was just starting out, was JT Miller, who's now the Rangers captain. He kind of took some twists and turns in his career between Rangers stops. What did you see in him as a young man? I think there's been I've certainly talked to plenty of guys that played with him as a younger guy and saw maybe a little things different now as he's matured into his 30s. But what was JT Miller like, kind of coming up fresh-faced, and could you see that potential in him to be a guy who wears a C?
first of all, JT, I had a pretty good front row seat for because he played on the fourth line for a lot of his time there when he was young. And I think he was frustrated in a lot of ways at that time. I think he was immature in a lot of ways at that time. But what I saw in addition to that was this guy's a hell of a player. And it's the little things that you pick up on that make you make that determination. For me, I'm playing the middle, and I've got a 21-year-old kid who's a centerman who's playing the wing. And the way that he would get a puck on the breakout along the wall, and most guys, veteran wingers even, would get that puck, they'd have pressure, they'd just try to chip, throw it off the glass. JT would already know he had three options, would have the poise to make a direct pass off the wall under pressure and right on my tape. You could see that this guy was special and had some unique abilities. Obviously easy for me to say now and easy for many of us to say now how big of a mistake it was to trade him at the time, given the youth that he had. But no, there was a lot to see there. I didn't necessarily see the way he would evolve as a two-way player and, good on face-offs. Maybe I could take a little credit for that because he used to laugh at my blade of my stick and call it the spatula because I would take him to school and face-offs and practice. But I always enjoyed JT and proud of his career.
This question is purely for me because Henrik Lundqvist I played goalie because of Henrik Lundqvist. When I played, and listen, my career wasn't very long, it wasn't very good, but I wanted to play goalie because of Henrik Lundqvist, and that watching him.
The Stanley Cup champion goalie wanted to play goalie because of Henrik Lundqvist.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Purely for my own sake and enjoyment, I would love to hear your either standout or favorite stories with him, whether that's, on the grandiose stage or just like the little things. I love, because everything I've heard about Hank is how great he is with his teammates and everything else. I would love to hear, what some of the things that stand out to you about him.
Yeah. Again, I think had a unique bond because we were rookies at the same time. We became close very early on. His wife Therese, all of that. We've stayed close to this day. I think Hank was always the most competitive. Everyone knows this. Always the most competitive guy in the room. And at times that would rub a lot of teammates the wrong way, including his rookie year, where he would come to the bench at a TV timeout and have a scowl at veterans. And I remember Michael Nylander going over and said, you can't do this. Like you're gonna, but that was the intensity that he had. And that intensity, I think, made him the player he was. It also made him, as he alluded to in his documentary, anyone who has not seen it yet, they should see it because it sheds a lot of light on his personality. I think he would be the first to acknowledge that his competitiveness ate away at him in a lot of ways, even though he wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's the intensity of focus that he required to stay at the top of his game for that long. Because goalies come along and have a good month, a good half season, a good season, a good 2 seasons, a good handful of seasons. But the ones that have a truly stellar, consistently stellar career are very few and far between. I mean, you could count in the history of the NHL, there's just not that many. So yes, he doesn't have a Stanley Cup, but I don't think that takes anything away from how remarkable he was at his position. And I also want to give some credit to Benoit Allaire, because Benny was the perfect antidote to Hank's intensity, because Benny had this unbelievable way about him where there's no such thing as a bad day. He's always got a smile on his face. He would empathize with Hank and understand his competitive nature and respect it and work with it. But also, he had this demeanor about him that was able to reset Hank on a daily basis. And Hank would be, again, the first person to tell you that. But Benoit will never, he's gotten a lot of credit. He will never get enough credit for the job he's done for the New York Rangers for his entire career. So hats off to the recently retired Benoit Allaire.
Yeah. I'm going to take you back to that rookie year, as you mentioned, because I think a lot of fans, too, from a previous vintage would love to hear about being Jaromir Jagr's teammate for your rookie year when he put up the greatest season in Rangers history. I covered Jags. He's like maybe the flip side of the coin from Hank. In equal talent, maybe a bit more of an enigma as a personality. What was that like, where you're sitting with one of the 5 or 6 greatest players to ever lived and having the season that he's having as you're just starting out?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first came out of college, it was pre-lockout, and I was trying to make the team, and Eric Lindros was the 4th line center.
That's right.
The Rangers payroll was $85 million in 2003. To give some perspective on that. And after the lockout, the payroll is $35 million, and there's, instead of Messier, all those guys, you've got now all of a sudden this completely different Rangers team with our top line of Jagr, Nylander, and Straka. Straka being the only one on that line that did most of the back checking, as we all know. But it was awesome to have a front row seat to that. To grow up watching these Hall of Fame caliber players, and then be next to them and see them every day. And Yogs, obviously, I didn't know growing up how unique a personality he was. So to get a front row seat to that was great. I mean, some of the unique training things, some of the funny things he would say too. I remember, some guys coming into that post-lockout year were still on pre-lockout deals, including Darius Kasparaitis, who was making a ton of money at the time. And I remember going into the locker room before a game, and there was no music on, and there was only a handful of guys in the room. And Yogs was there, and there was no music, and Yogs looking around, and Casper was the guy that usually put on the music. And Yogs just, hey, where's our $5 million DJ? So you could always count on Yogs for a good line or two. But I learned a lot from those guys, including Michael Nylander. Michael was the first guy that I really saw, work on fundamental skills every day. I mean, he was obsessive about, okay, I need to do 100 catching a pass on my backhand, with speed in the neutral zone until I get it right. And I immediately gravitated towards his mentality. And then you see the proof in the pudding with, this little 5-year-old kid that was in the locker room named William Nylander, who I played with at the end of my career. Clearly, he had the tutelage from his dad.
That's funny.
What was that like playing? You obviously played with his dad, and now you get to play with the son. Like that. That's got to be crazy.
That's when you know you're old. But yeah, Michael in Terrytown was my ping pong partner at the practice facility. He loved it. I loved it. We were both good players, and we would spend tons of time after practice battling on the ping pong table, and then fast forward 13 years or whatever, and who's my ping pong partner in with the Toronto Maple Leafs but William. I mean, it's just crazy. So I guess that it is a little badge of honor that you played long enough to play with a teammate's son. So I'll put that in my back pocket.
Thinking about that time, and I do remember your first NHL game when you came up in November, that wacky 03-04 season, and put up 3 assists. And I think we were all, as a media contingent, so desperate for somebody new to come along, somebody young, because it was such a, whether it was Mess or Bobby Holik, Yogs came along later. You were talking about alphas. There were a lot of alphas in that room. Alex Kovalev too. That was a brief taste for you pre-lockout, but it was such a messy time. Did you, how do you take that all in when you've just got a couple weeks to kind of experience it in the middle of the season?
Yeah, that was a whirlwind. I mean, you get called up, you play your first game, hallowed grounds of, the Bell Center in Montreal. You have a great game. I think I played 7.5 minutes, and had the 3 assists, and then you go back, play a second game. Second game was against my brother in the Avalanche. So another incredibly memorable moment for me and my family. You're obviously trying to prove yourself, stay in the lineup. It just went by so quickly, right? And then all of a sudden you're waiting another 1.5 years, for your next chance. And that was a heartbreaker. I got to take off in a minute, but that was a heartbreaker. The next year, the lockout year in Hartford, right around the Christmas time, there's the rumor that the lockout's going to end. And I felt like, okay, like tomorrow I could be in New York, and then all of a sudden, just kidding, the whole season's canceled. That was a tough pill to swallow.
I think we lost Tom. I think he froze.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Hi, Dad.
I think you got a little interference. That's all right.
Yeah, I think we heard a hi, Dad.
Oh yeah. Well,
I got you back, but I do have to run.
We heard a hi, Dad.
Now we know why you have to go.
Best kind of interference.
Okay.
2 minutes in the box
right.
for doing that. You can't do that. But thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate your time.
This was awesome.
My
Don.
pleasure,
really
guys.
Appreciate it.
Good to join you guys. Yeah, take care.
For sure,
appreciate it. See ya.
Bye.
It was really cool to, kind of understand his perspective on, especially the preparation in the locker room and the leadership aspects. Because you talk to everybody has kind of a different way to approach the question of leadership. But what does that mean? It's one person wants screaming and yelling. The second person wants, to just lead by example. It's for Dom. I was curious, and I'm glad that he, was so candid about this, the way that the 14 team was, because the last couple of years it kind of just feels like there's there wasn't that comedic relief. Like Kevin Klein is not on this 26 team, and Bob Marley isn't being played. And when going into the locker room after the games, after another bad loss, you could genuinely hear a pin drop. And yeah, the 14 team was a lot better, both on the ice and off the ice than the Rangers were these past couple of years. But it does kind of speak to that way of leadership and alphas, or whatever you want to put it, definitely is a mix that doesn't really seem to be here in New York right now. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
No, I mean, and obviously watching our buddy Johnny Lazarus interview Keandre Miller on the ice last night, and pretty pointed comments from Keandre Miller. You don't have to read too deeply between the lines to hear him say how much he's enjoying you win a Stanley Cup, you're going to enjoy the season. Clearly it's going to feel a lot different, but I think he said something about everybody pulling the same way. And you hear Dom talk about that, and it's a huge part of successful teams, even teams that don't get to the highest, to the promised land and win a Stanley Cup. You have to have everybody. You don't have to all like each other, but you do all have to be committed to sacrificing for one another and being part of the team, and setting aside annoyance or ego or whatever. And you see these things, and whether it's part of the people in the room, whether it's part of the people that are making the decisions, that remains to be seen around these last couple of years of the Rangers team. But I think the evidence is pretty strong that there's not a lot of togetherness in there for whatever reason. So it's great to hear that stuff, and to know, you can kind of look at the stats and say, nobody other than number 30 carried them anywhere that year. It was a group effort. And epitomized by what Dom was talking about in Game 6. Hank makes one of the greatest saves in Rangers history, and people maybe forget who scored the goal, but it was Dominic Moore, a guy who you wouldn't think of as being the hero, but they had a lot of different guys play that hero role that season. And we didn't really want to get into too much of that final series, but it was, it was a 5-game series that didn't feel like a 5-game series. And I'm sure he would say that, and the other guys that played on that Rangers team have said it in the past that I've talked to, that they were right there, winning up by 2 goals in each of the first 2 games and OT losses. And it's funny to think about how far they are from that right now. But when we talked to him about 2004, when he first came up, the 10-year gap there, where he's playing on a team that ragtag doesn't even begin to describe how crazy that group was. And the fact that Dom is Dom and played in the league a long time, and understood even at 22, 23, the habits of a guy like Michael Nylander that you need to copy to stay relevant and stay in the league when you don't have, top line level talent. Dom was always, it's a cliche to say the guy who went to Harvard would be one of the smarter guys in the room, but he was always one of the smartest guys in the room. And that to me is what smarts is about when he's talking about, I better figure out these habits to make myself relevant in 900 games and a Stanley Cup final and a couple of conference finals later. I think we know that he was a smart guy when it came to the, that hockey IQ.
It was really fun listening to him talking about John Tortorella. By the way, I thought that question from Laz was perfectly fine.
It was. I think we've learned over the years from Torts and the late Larry Brooks that there's a performative element to what Torts does, and I'm sure he didn't want any more questions about whether he was going to switch goalies. The fact that it was Johnny was hilarious, because Johnny is a human. He's a punching bag for sure. He's like a teddy bear that you have to scream into to get mad at if you don't want to get mad at somebody else. So he can take it. He certainly milked it for all it was worth on all of his social media accounts. But yeah, I think Torts, that's one way to lead, is to take the heat off your guys. And Torts has turned that into an art form. I think even people in the media who should know better tend to get suckered in a little bit, be like, oh, what is he doing? This guy's such a jerk. And it's like, you gotta, he comes off as this like raw guy. And sometimes he is that way, but that stuff is calculated. That stuff, especially at this stage of the playoffs, and it ultimately didn't end up working out for them. But you like you said, there's not one way to be a leader in the room or behind the bench or in the front office. And, I think we see it with Rod Brind'Amour, who's a guy who kind of takes a lot of the spotlight. Again,
we saw a lot of Rod Brind'Amour.
We see a lot of Rod Brind'Amour a lot during the season.
Massive human being. God, Jesus.
He likes to be in the spotlight still. I think he was like that as a player, a guy who nobody works harder than, but I think he likes the rewards that come with it. And I think it keeps it keeps Carolina kind of, that sort of faceless, interchangeable group where they do have incredible talent. They won a Stanley Cup, but they do make a lot of changes every year. And I think one way you do that is that you don't allow people to get too attached, because you've got the coach who's the spotlight is on him a lot, and for good reason. He's a great coach. So you can make those changes. You can't, if you're the Rangers circa 2014 and Henrik Lundqvist isn't getting it done, you can't go to Cam Talbot. You can't make that change. Everyone will freak out because it's Henrik Lundqvist. If you're the Carolina Hurricanes and Freddie Anderson has tweaked his knee or done whatever, you can go to Brandon Bussey, because the focus is not on the goaltenders. It's not on the personalities. It's on the team. And that, I think, is a tough one to emulate, because they've been building it for such a long time. So I think, we talk about copycat league. It's going to be hard to copy what Carolina does. And me personally, I don't know that they're going to be able to muster enough that grind to get through what they need to get through to repeat. It's incredible. I don't take nothing away. It's kind of like people talking about the Knicks, like, they didn't play anybody good. Carolina had an easier path. The East wasn't that strong this year. They obviously had a tough finals, but they will continue to do what they do. And I think, it's more about what the other teams can do, to whether there's going to be one or two teams good enough to kind of overcome them.
Yeah, I will. And the thing about Carolina too is, and we talked about this when we were talking about the playoffs, is I did not believe in Carolina at all. And they were, roughly the same team, plus Miller, plus of course Nikolai Ehlers as well to the mix, and that they were a really great team. I just didn't believe I didn't have any belief in them, not because the team wasn't good, but we saw them year after year, seemingly with that same nucleus, the same core, get to the second round and get beaten by the Rangers, get to the conference finals and get their doors blown off, and they get swept and they're out of there. They won, I think, one conference final game last year. It just felt like, this is a true example of a paper tiger that just cannot get out of their own way. Sometimes they get to the same place every year and they just fall apart. And so it's interesting to me that, the Hurricanes didn't have, the Stars, the Avalanche, and, whoever else to get to the final, but like you would have to do in the West. But you still got to get there. The Hurricanes don't pick their opponent. They can play who's in front of them, and that's it. So it is interesting to me that with these couple of new additions, and these guys are really good, of course, that there was almost a switch flipped, because this is a lot of the same roster that we saw, a lot of the same, the coaching staff that we saw last year in Carolina, and these couple of extra bonus additions really turned that team into a power. 16-3 is an insane record, no matter who you're playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think the difference to me is they did change their makeup in a pretty significant way, and I think it was evidenced by the fact that their best line throughout the playoffs was Taylor Hall and Stankoven and Jackson Blake, who were, three guys that weren't part of their organization even a couple of years ago. Blake was still coming up, but Stankoven came over in the Rantanen trade, and Taylor Hall, could fairly say a journeyman guy right now. He's super talented, but he's kind of been a homeless B+ level player the last 4 or 5 years. So that was the line that carried them, not their big boys, not Jarvis, Aho, Svechnikov. And I think that's where the difference, and obviously what Jordan Stahl did in the finals, incredible hats off to him. And
at 37 years old,
great seeing him with Mark and Eric and Jared there jumping up and down and on the bench after they won it. All credit to him for sure, but they are a deeper team than they've been. And I think where Aho is maybe kind of putting together, he's got the ring now, but he was putting together kind of a Panarin-like stretch of playoffs where you didn't see enough from a guy who's, not in any, he's their best player. He's been their best player for a long time, not a superstar, but their best player. And you didn't see enough from him in the playoffs, really, I think the last few years to justify him being called that. So and he still wasn't their best player, even close to it this postseason run, but they didn't need him because they had better depth. The games where, you'd see they'd need a Jordan Martinook, they'd need some fluky goals to beat an Islanders or beat a Devils in the earlier rounds, where you're not going to get that against a Florida or against a Rangers. They had the depth, and Freddie Anderson, he wasn't there when it mattered again, but certainly carried them through some individual moments in games that could have turned some things around. It's the irony of ironies to me that this guy who's gone missing in the biggest moments because of injury isn't out there to win the Stanley Cup. And what a great story Brandon Bussey is, a Long Island kid who'd been, a really good AHL goalie. And again, credit to Eric Tulsky and Carolina's scouting department, Peter Harold, a guy who's been there a long time. They know what they're doing. They know what fits them well. They know that, hey, even if, you can't predict it, but if we get to the finals, we might need a second goalie. And this kid, 27 years old, is an NHL rookie, and what he did this season and in the finals, just great stuff. And it's a good group of guys. It's a good team. They don't, they're not that dirty. They're not whatever, Ranger fans and Islander fans and Devils fans hate them because they are the cream of the crop in the Metro, and they have been for a long time. And I would wonder if the Rangers were still halfway competitive and if the Panthers were halfway competitive, if Carolina could get through to this point, because those two teams seem to be their kryptonite. But other than that, hats off to them. It's a great win. I hope it does a lot for the fan base down there. And yeah, it's nice to finally get to the off season, the proper off season too, because we've seen hints of maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen, and now we're kind of in the we'll be in the buyout window shortly here, and then it'll be the draft and it'll be free agency, and we'll see what the Rangers are able to come up with. But hats off to the Hurricanes, and next season is ready to come now.
It's officially off-season mode, both in the NHL and both in the NBA as well. Now it's all about the draft, and then we get to free agency, and then there's nothing for like 3 months. We're all so hyped up on these finals were incredible. Every game was so much fun to watch. It's over. Yeah. And the season's 4 months away. I mean, you got preseason and all that, but regular season's 4 months away. Now what do we do? It's like, it happens every year, but it's always like the come down from the mountain is always the toughest part as someone that enjoys the sport.
Yep. But if you're a Ranger fan now, you can kind of get the games out of the way. It's been 2 straight seasons of very long stretches without Rangers hockey. So now the hopefully not too silly season, but the silly season begins, and we'll see what they can do.
If you are still here, first of all, thank you for sticking around. Hey, better thumbs up this video. It really helps the YouTube algorithm, the fancy machine that they got going on in the background. Hey, really appreciate it. If you could like the video, subscribe to the video. We got plenty more content coming up. The draft is like 7 minutes away, so we got to prepare for that. There's plenty of content coming up. We are live every single Monday. See you next week.